Yo, what is up, my friends and denizens of the multiverse? It is me again. I'm gonna try to kick it once again with you. Got some more randoms. Let's see here, guys. First up, I'm gonna talk a little bit about country music. Not a big fan myself, but this little guy I found kind of interesting.
Mama, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys.
Alright, so you probably might know that song. I'm not sure. Classic tune. Um, this little tidbit of knowledge that song speaks directly to, and I came across a little list of statistics on certain songs that were used within country music. So I will share those with you right now. First off, 1 in 5 country tunes refers to alcohol. Not a big surprise there. 1 in 3 songs refers to tears. And of course, 1 in 7 refers to the words mama. So, hence why I chose that song. Mama, don't let your babies to grow up to be cowboys. Classic little tune there. So this got me thinking. I wonder if I could compare other tunes, other genres of music, and see what they use a lot of in their songs. So there's a vast amount of knowledge on the interwebs about this. First off, I couldn't really compare rap. I might be violating some obscenity laws if I jumped into that, so we'll leave that one alone. But if we get into a little R&B and soul, those guys win hands down for the use of the word love. Love is in darn near every tune when it comes to R&B and soul. Now, as we get into the more popular pop music, uh, also known for not having the most deep lyrics, usually pretty basic stuff just to get you going, feeling the groove. Their top 10 were a little not surprising, pretty base. We got the top 10 rundown right here. Oh, got, feel, down, yeah, need, gonna, hear, life, and thing are about the top 10 lyrics that you're gonna hear in almost every pop song. So there you go. Kind of wacky stuff there. Moving right along, my next little bits of knowledge are about music in space. Now, that is not something I think most people spend too much time thinking about. But there's actually been a fair bit of music go on in space. Obviously, the astronauts going up to the space station or doing flights, uh, they're allowed to bring music with them. I imagine that would be an important part of what they do pack. I don't think they can pack a lot of stuff going on the space shuttle. Um, but most famously, one of our very own Canadians, Chris Hadfield, is now acclaimed with being the first ever to record an album entirely in space. And of course, he called that album Space Sessions Songs from a Tin Can. And I will play a little snippet. I don't know if you were alive and around at the time, you would have probably heard this track because it got a lot of airplay all over the place. Uh, Pretty groovy cover of a David Bowie song, Space Oddity. But of course, he did it in 0 G's up on the space station. Kind of wild. Not the best cover by any means, but it brought some new meaning to the song. because he actually was sitting there floating in a tin can, as the lyrics say. Now, Chris Hadfield, man, he became such a personality from outer space, and he's continued to do so. But a lot of that has to do with his kids. They were the ones who encouraged him to reach out to us down below while he was up there. So he was all over the interwebs on Twitter and things of that nature. Um, One of my favorite things about his long stint up there on the space station was his his videos that he did, that ultimately made it onto YouTube, where he would answer questions that people had asked. And they were everything from, how do you poo in zero gravity to what happens if you uh, wring out a wet washcloth in zero gravity. And I urge you, if you haven't seen these, to check them out. They're still valid and still really surprising and cool. So yeah, that was Chris Hatfield, man. First ever album in outer space, recorded entirely out there. Pretty wild. A man ahead of the curve, pretty good at self isolation, I would say. And yeah, Canadian hero for sure. So, moving along, talking about space music, this makes me think of one of the most uh, famous bits of music in space. Now, all of this music was recorded on Earth, but it is now out there somewhere. I'm, of course, talking about the Golden Record. Now, I don't know if everyone knows what the Golden Record is, but the Golden Record was effectively a mixtape for aliens. Um, Back in the 1970s, they sent this thing out attached to the one of the probes. Crap, I can't recall the name of the probe that it was, mind you. I'm sure I probably threw it in my notes somewhere, but I don't. Anyways, it might come to me as I'm talking here. I think it might have been the Discovery. We'll go with that, for sure. So, anyways, they decided to attach to this probe this large disc, a record of sorts, with all sorts of images. So they put, I think, 116 different images of just life on planet Earth. And I don't know who was responsible necessarily for selecting what pictures they showed. If you go on the interwebs, you can check these things out. It's just a random selection of photos. I don't know how you would pick. Um, if you were to try to communicate with other beings, how would you show who we are, what we're about, as in the entire Earth? That would be a difficult task, I think. Um, they put on greetings from 50 different languages, and a compilation of just random sounds of traffic and animals and weather, you name it. But most interestingly, they chose about 90 minutes of music. So there's an interesting story behind the mixed bag of nuts that selected these tunes. I've just always wondered, like, wow, how would you depict out of the history of music, at least up till 1970, whatever, how would you choose what to, if anything, send? And I guess the next biggest question is, do aliens have record players? Because I don't know. I don't know if they do, right? Kind of a weird project. Of course, the people who were selected, big group of people. I don't remember all of them, but first and foremost, the astronomer Carl Sagan, very famous dude there, big thinker. hosted the original Cosmos television series, which was quite a cool little um, exploration of outer space. And then they had Tim Ferriss, who was a big wig over at Rolling Stone magazine, and some astrophysicist guy, and then a few other people. So they spent an exorbitant amount of time discussing philosophy and religion and all sorts of things, trying to come up with what songs they could send to our potential friends out there somewhere in outer space. And they came up with a broad list, everything from this dude here, which I'll play a little snippet of. Definitely a classic in rock and roll. Of course, that is Mr. Chuck Berry doing a little Johnny Be Good. They kicked out a little classical, um, and then all sorts of native chants from around the world and different music. So I don't know. I don't know if you can pick up a copy of this so-called golden record anywhere, but I think that would be quite a collector's item, anyways. Who knows if any aliens will ever find it on the Discovery probe and um, know what to do with it or even recognize it for what it is. But I think that's kind of a fun little thing. Um, yeah. uh, since those eras in space exploration, we have rarely sent any kind of messages to potential extraterrestrials, which I find kind of sad. There was something kind of hopeful about this mixtape to the aliens that I kind of think is kind of groovy. Yeah. So speaking of that, that makes me think of something I recall reading a little while back about uh, the Mars rover. And I don't remember, I think it was called Curiosity, which is kind of an interesting name. So apparently, when the Mars rover Curiosity was sitting there, however many bloody miles away from Earth, sitting there on Mars all alone, as far as we know, um, on the 1 year anniversary of it crashing down onto the Mars surface. Uh, the geeks and scientists that had worked on the Curiosity rover for many years and lots of blood, sweat, and tears had decided to program it to play itself the Happy Birthday song. And I don't know. I guess from just watching too many sci-fi movies as a kid where they kind of personified, anthropomorphized a robot and made it seem like it had feelings. And I just think that image of this poor robot sitting all by itself on a planet playing happy birthday to itself is so kind of depressing. But I don't know. I was gonna play a snippet of the Happy Birthday song. I think you all know it, and just out of sheer spite, I don't think I will play a snippet of that. I think everyone knows it. Um, but that makes me think of something else that I happen to know about the Happy Birthday song. Now, I think everybody all across the world is saying it, at least some sort of rendition. We all know it. Um, there's some differences here and there, and some people throw a little and many more on the end or something like that, but we all know the song. Well, a few years back, um, a large corporation known as the Warner Music Group claimed to own the rights to that song. And what that meant was that anytime someone opted to use the song in a television show or to use it publicly, at least, they claimed royalties on that. And, a little over a decade ago, um, on many occasions, they were raking in like a good 5G in a day just for people using the happy birthday song. And it wasn't unheard of for them to charge as much as $10,000 for a single use in a film, especially if it was a big blockbuster. So this is why I believe that in some restaurants, although they will do a version of Happy Birthday, um, if it's requested, um, they often do up their own screwy Louis version of that. So um, they, I think, have opted to do that just in case, some bigwig uh, music person involved with Warner Music happens to be there and wants to sue them and get the royalty check from them. So interesting enough. Turns out uh, those guys over at Warner Music are just a bunch of greedy buggers. There was a big lawsuit against them. I can't remember when specifically, but ultimately, the findings in that court case were that they most certainly did not own the rights to the Happy Birthday song. Uh, and it is now and forever part of the public domain, meaning you can use it however you like and you don't have to pay the man. So there you go. All right, moving along. I don't even know how many randoms I'm sharing with you this time, man. It's a little late by my watch, and I need to get cruising. So I will just keep carrying on, I guess. And when I'm done, I'm done. Hopefully that works for y'all. Let's see here. Oh, yes. So my next random is about this band, or at least the frontman of this band, Mr. Dave Grohl. And I don't know if you guys all know him or like him or whatever, but turns out Dave Grohl is a hard person not to like. Um, and I can prove that fact by one simple thing. Um, if you Google the nicest man in rock, I will guarantee you, I checked this fact out myself. Most of the hits will come up all about Dave Grohl. Repeated article after article after article, information about Dave Grohl and how much that dude rocks on stage and off. He's just genuinely a good person, giving to charities, spending extra time with super happy fans. Yeah, he's just a really cool guy. Um, One of my favorite moments where he wasn't being such a nice guy, but I think it just made him cooler. I don't recall the concert, but he stops mid song, gets the band to knock off playing, and calls out this guy who was getting rough with other audience members. And he demands that this dude stop whatever he's doing. Don't worry about whoever he's mad at. He's like, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, get out of my show. Although he drops some expletives and keeps telling him, get out of my show. You don't mess around and you don't fight at my show. People come here to have a good time. Get the heck out of my show, you mother babe, And I don't know, it was just a really cool moment. And as far as I know, the security, sent that young man who perhaps had too many wobbly pops or is just having a bad night on his way. And how embarrassing would that be? You're at this big rock show, thousands of audience in attendance. Everyone's there to have a good time, and the lead singer just called you out on being a goof and kicked you out of the show, man. That would be so embarrassing, right? Anyways, that makes me also think of some people who are not really known for being so nice, at least not being so nice to our ears. Um, I am talking about these guys here. Little outfit on the heavier side of life, known as Man o' War. And Man o' War have made a claim to be the loudest band ever. And they made this claim specifically on one of their uh, tours. They played at a festival called the Magic Circle or something like that fest. And they rang in at a solid 139 decibels. So we'll talk a little bit about how much that is in relation to some other things in a moment. But they were hoping that the Guinness Book of World Records would acknowledge this as them being the loudest band ever. Guinness Book would not acknowledge their claim because it no longer includes this category. They say they don't want to encourage hearing damage. Isn't that nice? I agree with them. They shouldn't encourage that. However, good on you, Guinness, but you definitely encourage all kinds of stupidity and nonsense, in Aaron's opinion, anyway. So, anywho, to get back to how loud that 139 decibels was, um, to put it in perspective, 120 decibels is the loudness of one of those big, massive transatlantic jets taking off at 200 feet away. Pretty damn loud. So add another 19 decibels on there. That's getting up there. Um, Most medics would officially say 130 decibels, so just shy of where these guys were at, as the threshold of pain. So, yeah, you ever going to see Man o' War, make sure you bring some serious ear protection. Um, Another thing you might want to bring, in my opinion, not only are they offensively loud, but I also think these guys are offensive in appearance. This is a, hopefully this comes through on the computer, but here is their stage getup. What is going on there, boys? That is wow. That I find that uh, terribly offensive. I don't want to look at that. Thanks so much, there, Man of War. I think that should be a crime, if not the sound violations. That's for sure. All right, so there you go. There's some Man of War hurting our ears and our eyes. Okay, looks like I'm down to my last little happy um, tidbit o knowledge, and this one I found. I read it somewhere quite some time ago and didn't really pay it too much credence. But this is about a pretty infamous um, composer. Play a little lovely snippet of the man, Mr. Mozart, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. So this one goes back to 2016, which was 225 years after the guy had died. And it turns out that year, um, his CD sales spiked significantly. So much so that he outsold uh, all of the top artists that year. Adele, Drake, Beyonce, all these big pop artists that were larger than life. Mozart suddenly outsold um, everyone popular at the time. So, how the heck could an 18th century composer sell more than pop music? Uh, the biggest names of the day, right? Well, it turns out that year they were commemorating the 225th uh, anniversary of the man's passing, and they put out a box set of CDs. Now, the way these things are tabulated, each CD in the box set was registered as a single sale. So the box set contained 200 CDs, right? So he was selling quite a bit. Lots of Mozart fans out there. Nothing wrong with a little Mozart every now and again. Uh, but coupled with that, the kids these days, man, they're not buying CDs as much, if at all. Most people, at least the youngins, are accessing their music by all kinds of streaming services such as Spotify or searching out stuff on YouTube, and they're not buying the hard copy stuff. So those two things combined made Mozart, long, long after his death, a top seller once again. And you know what? Why shouldn't we give the man this love? The guy composed like well over 600 compositions. Um, he wrote music in pretty much every genre that was on vogue at the time. Everything from opera to stuff like you're hearing right now, piano sonatas, um, and got off to a real early start. I think he wrote his very first piece at the age of 5. And most people with any knowledge of music, if you listen to it, you would not believe that a 5-year-old had written that. What were most of us doing at 5? Not writing any music, that's for sure. And this actually has some skill and can be appreciated by all. So quite amazing stuff, right? All right, guys, that is the end of my happy random list for this week. Um, I hope everyone's doing well. Just to give you the lowdown on something that I was working on, I just wasn't quite ready for today. I've been watching a lot of movies lately with a little extra downtime, and um, something that I always find impactful when I watch movies. It's not just the cinematography and the acting, but it's the soundtrack that goes along with it. And I think there are some movies that I at least think wouldn't have been the same, wouldn't have been as awesome without their amazing soundtrack. So I haven't quite gotten all of my ideas together yet for that, but tune in next week, and I hope to drop a little video about some of my favorite soundtracks. So maybe you can reminisce with me a little bit and maybe learn something about how those soundtracks were made or what the inspiration was behind them. Anyways, guys, it's been a slice, and I hope to see y'all soon. Adios.